States. At the Secretary's instruction, we continue to implement the President's direction regarding foreign assistance for El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. We completed a review, and previously awarded grants and contracts will continue with current funding. State Department assistance in support of priorities of the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security priorities to help the Northern Triangle governments take actions that will protect the U.S. border and counter transnational organized crime will also continue. We will not provide new funds for programs in those countries until we are satisfied the Northern Triangle governments are taking concrete actions to reduce the number of illegal migrants coming to the U.S. border. Working with Congress, we will reprogram those funds to other priorities as appropriate. This is consistent with the President's direction and with the recognition that it is critical that there be sufficient political will in these countries to address the problem at its source. As Secretary Pompeo has said, these nations have the responsibility to take care of the immigration problems in their home country. Okay, and one more. Tomorrow, Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, Secretary Pompeo will visit United States Central Command and the United States Special Operations Command at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. There, he will meet with General Kenneth McKenzie, Commander of Central Command, and General Richard Clark, Commander of Special Operations Command, to discuss regional security concerns and ongoing operations. And I will be headed out with the Secretary, so I apologize, but this briefing will be a little bit shorter than normal since the airplane doesn't wait on me.
Tomorrow.
The meetings are tomorrow.
But he's leaving today.
Yes.
All right. Just before I go into Iran, can I just ask you on the Northern Triangle aid? Do you have dollar amounts for what the total was that was initially suspended, and how much, and the amount that is going to continue now? And if you don't, could you get them?
We will get you the exact ones, some rough estimates, and I'll make sure to get you the exact dollar figures. Is that, excuse me, we will continue to meet our contractual obligations for FY17, and that funding that's already been programmed is around $400 million. Again, we'll get you the directive. The $200 million continues to be paused or in an escrow.
And sorry, 17. The $400 million is both the stuff that have been previously awarded and there was some stuff that you said will continue.
Yeah, so there was about, I believe it was 707 was the number of programs in a very thorough and comprehensive review that we did. And of course, we said our assistance in support of priority programs from DOJ and Homeland Security will continue. Mm-hmm. So we'll get you the exact figures, but those are rough estimates of where we are with FY17.
Sorry, 707 was what?
Okay, so 707 is the number
DOJ.
of programs and activities, writ large.
Total.
Writ large, right.
400 million of which will continue.
In the very extensive review, exactly. All right. And that's an approximate number, obviously.
Fair enough, but it sounds like, more than half is going to continue to go, right? Anyway.
From FY17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on Iran. I want to ask a variation of the question I asked you last week, which was when your ambassador to the IAEA noted that Iran was potentially or possibly in violation of the JCPOA on advanced centrifuges, and she called for the IAEA, and particularly the European parties to the deal, to urge Iran to stay in compliance. Now today we have a situation where the Iranians say they're going to bust through the limits on their low enriched uranium stockpile, and maybe even start enriching up to 20%. Does this administration see any value in Iran staying within the limits outlined by the JCPOA?
So I would say that we are unfortunately not surprised by the Iranian announcement. As we've talked quite a bit from this podium, this is a pattern of 40 years of behavior. It's consistent with how the Iranian regime behaves. They did this when we were in the JCPOA, right? They continued to build their missile program. We relieved sanctions. They took American sailors hostage. We have seen no moderating behavior by this regime. And in fact, what we're seeing here, of course, over the past week, is constantly threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz. A number of activities, not just the 2 commercial shipping vessels that we discussed this week, but 4 other commercial ships So I think what we're seeing here is really a challenge, not only in the JCPOA, but really a challenge to the international norms on how a country behaves, a challenge to the international norms on freedom of navigation and freedom of the seas. And so we, would say to the international community that we should not yield to nuclear extortion by the Iranian regime.
Okay, I just want to focus on the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, and nothing else.
Okay.
Just that. Not taking the hostages, not malign activity, not things that are not covered in the JCPOA. Does the administration believe there is value in Iran continuing to comply with the JCPOA, which the president called the worst deal ever negotiated?
Listen, we continue to call on the Iranian regime not to obtain a nuclear weapon, to abide by their commitments to the international community. And I think, it's unfortunate that they've made this announcement today. As I said earlier, it doesn't surprise anybody. I think this is why the president has often said that the JCPOA needs to be replaced with a new and better deal. Iran, as evident by their announcement today, but also their pattern of behavior over the past few years, is keen on expanding, or seems to be keen on expanding their nuclear program, and it now wants to exceed these nuclear limits in advance of these so-called sunset
But
clauses.
that suggests that you believe that there is value in these limits. No, does it not? I mean,
We call on the Iranians not to obtain a nuclear weapon and to abide by the commitments that they've made to the international community.
Okay.
Nick?
Maureen, is the Secretary disappointed with the response from the international community so far? You've said we would like to say to the international community they should not yield to nuclear extortion. So has the administration been disappointed by the response, for one thing, to the attacks on last week, and more broadly on viewing the threat and the way to respond to Iran?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, I think that we have seen the international community and our allies step up to condemn this behavior. I mean, this clearly what we're seeing in the Strait of Hormuz defies the pattern, the tenets that we all hold dear as it relates to freedom of navigation, freedom of the seas. The Secretary has been working, of course, incredibly closely within the government with Acting Secretary Shanahan on multiple times, working on ensuring that we are able to defend our people and our interests. We're, of course, working on the diplomatic solution, while Secretary Shanahan and the team at DoD is focused on our military options to keep our people, our interests, and our allies safe. Over the weekend, as almost every weekend with the Secretary, he's probably the most hardworking person I've ever worked for. The Secretary had a number of calls with the NATO Secretary General, with a Chinese Politburo member, with the Singaporean Foreign Minister, Kuwaiti Foreign Minister, UK Foreign Minister, Emirati Foreign Minister, Republic of Korea Foreign Minister, Qatari Foreign Minister. We obviously don't have readouts from every single call that he has, but we have worked incredibly hard with our allies on this assessment as it relates to Iran's actions last week in the Gulf of
Just a
Oman.
quick follow-up to that.
I'm going to mispronounce the name, so I'll get it to you. So
What the title?
The position, yeah. I didn't
it's a
hear.
Politburo member.
Does the Secretary believe that the U.S. strategy, as he laid out when he set forth these 12 demands, I mean, given the tensions only seem to be escalating, does he believe that the U.S. strategy toward Iran is currently working?
Our maximum pressure campaign continues, and it will continue to be what we pursue. We think it's incredibly unfortunate, of course, the Iranian announcement today, but when we look and see what's happened in the region, again, this is, as we always say, I know, 40 years of behavior, but especially over the past few years, when you look at this assessment that the Secretary gave here from this podium, I want to reiterate something that he said, because I think it's sort of gotten lost in the media coverage. He said our assessment is based on the intelligence, the weapons used, levels of expertise needed to execute the operation, recent similar Iranian attacks on shipping, and of course the fact that no proxy group in the area has the resources and proficiency to act with this high degree of sophistication. So we will continue to work with our allies and work with our international partners who would like to help us deter this Iranian behavior, who would like to help us get them back to the negotiating table, who would like to help us get them to behave like a normal nation. That's the whole goal here. Our demands are not high. Our demands are that they stop terrorizing the region.
Thank you. Just to follow on Matt's question, so while there is no new deal between the U.S. and Iran, you ask Iran to abide by the JCPOA, even though the U.S. left this deal? When you say you have to abide to their international commitments, you mean to abide to the JCPOA, which the U.S. left?
Yeah, we have made it very clear since this president came into office and since the secretary came here that we will not tolerate Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon, full stop. So any actions that they take to get a nuclear weapon will be countered by a maximum pressure campaign by the United States government that continues to this day. There should be no relieving of sanctions for their malign and unacceptable behavior. Rich? Finally, Rich, you showed up.
I know. Finally got the corrections. The secretary last week, when he was discussing this, he used the phrase that Iran was lashing out. In the calculation, when the administration decided a year ago to withdraw from the nuclear agreement, did it anticipate or expect that there would be a greater level of this lashing out as a result of the U.S. withdrawal?
Well, I think that the United States and the Secretary and this administration in general were well aware of the pattern of behavior from the Iranian regime. Anybody who's studied them more than a hot minute, who have looked at them for the past 40 years, knows how they will behave. I would love for someone to give me an example of some sort of moderating behavior that the Iranian regime pursued post-JCPOA. I have no evidence of that. I have evidence of them taking U.S. sailors as hostages. I have evidence of the IRGC having millions, if not billions of dollars to fund terrorism around the world, to fund Houthis, who we saw hit yet another airport in Saudi Arabia where American civilians go through. All of you just saw that report. There's been no moderation. They continue to terrorize. Sure, Saeed.
Yeah, thank you. Very quickly, I know I asked you last week about Ambassador Friedman, and you stated...
No, I know. I called on Saeed, and he can finish. And I'm going to have to go in a few minutes. You can finish, Saeed.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Very quickly, yesterday, or not last week, you said that what Mr. Friedman said was not U.S. policy. U.S. policy towards annexation.
I said that our
very
policy
clear.
on the West Bank hasn't
on the
changed.
West Bank and Gaza and
Yes.
annexation is very clear. But yesterday, the chief negotiator or the envoy, chief envoy, Mr. Jason Greenblatt, said exactly the same thing. I mean, apparently they did not listen to your statement last week, or the position, or did not take into consideration the position of this building historically. So do you have any response to that? He said exactly the same thing. He said that he basically supports what Mr. Friedman said.
I read Jason's comments, and I didn't take it the way that you just characterized, but I will reiterate that there is no plan for an annexation by Israel of the West Bank that they have presented to us, nor is it under discussion. So I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. If and when their government pursues anything to us, we'll be happy to have a comment. Sure.
I have two questions, one on Iran and one on Egypt.
Okay.
Iran said today that it had exposed a large cyber espionage network run by the US, by the CIA. Do you have anything on this?
I don't. Thank
and
you.
on the death
of
of former Egyptian President Mohammed Morsi, do you have anything?
No, we saw that the death was reported. So
And Iran,
BBC.
Just to go back to Iran briefly, have you been speaking to Congress about the oil tanker attacks, and in particular using that as an argument to get lawmakers to back down on their attempts to block the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, because they were still quite determined to try after the briefing last week?
That's an interesting correlation that you just made. I mean, the secretary, of course, said very publicly whenever he made this decision to continue the arms sale, which I would reiterate that those arms sales are to many countries in the Middle East, not just Saudi Arabia. We're talking about Jordan, we're talking about the United Arab Emirates, and some smaller arms sales in there as well. But one of the justifications was, of course, because of the imminent threats from Iran. Since I have to go in a few minutes, I believe somebody wanted to ask on North Korea, and I want to give them the chance. Go ahead.
Thank you,
and
Morgan.
then I'll get Matt for the last one, and then we'll have to go.
Yeah,
But I will be back. I promise. Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
Shouldn't say that.
According
Go
to
ahead.
the Voice of America yesterday, Kim Jong-un said in a secret document the final goal of the North Korea's nuclear negotiation with the United States is to strengthen North Korea's nuclear power. Therefore, North Korea, Kim Jong-un is not willing to denuclearization of North Korea. What is your comment?
We see a lot of media reports like this all the time on whether it's North Korea or other parts of the world, and we certainly don't comment and speculate on every report. But since you asked me, President Trump and the Secretary believe that Chairman Kim will fulfill his commitment to denuclearize, and that remains our policy. Final question, Matt. No, final question, Matt.
I just wanted to know if you, well, I believe that you would have seen the protests in Hong Kong over the weekend.
Yes, sir.
That continued despite the fact that the government put the extradition bill, or at least postponed it for a little bit.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what you make of the situation there, and if you believe that the Chinese are acting in an appropriate way here.
It certainly was moving, I think, as a citizen and a democracy to watch these peaceful protests happen in Hong Kong. And we're seeing the people there in Hong Kong, of course, demonstrating for their basic rights, for the rights of freedom of speech, for freedom of assembly, all of these things which are enshrined into basic law. And so, of course, as we observe these, we continue to call on the Hong Kong government to address the concerns of their public, to consult with local and international stakeholders who may be affected by this proposed amendment, even though I know it, of course, has been postponed. The Secretary spoke about this a little yesterday on some of the Sunday shows that he was on and said, that we're watching the people of Hong Kong speak about the things that we value. And I think that we have been pretty straightforward and transparent from this podium on our support for these peaceful protesters. I will see you all Wednesday. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. These spammers are out of control, folks. These spammers are crazy. And we had to switch over to members only chat because I can't even take one, I can't even go away for a second off the chat without it being flooded. So I apologize for that. But like I said, we're trying very hard to make sure that these spammers get blocked. But YouTube already, they reached out to us and they said, we're working on it, but we don't know how long it's going to take. We really can't do anything about it. It's just crazy with these spammers. But we switch over to, whenever it gets bad like this, we just switch over to members only chat. And like I said, I apologize that, that this happens, but I've heard that it doesn't just happen to our channel, it happens to many other live streams. But the best way for us to combat it right now is to switch it over to members only chat. And I think that's the best way to do it for right now until YouTube figures out and they do something about it, but they don't want to do anything about it because they know that that people will go away and instead of them actually trying to ban us, because they want us off the platform, but we haven't given them a reason to kick us off. So they're trying everything, folks. They're trying everything. But thank you so much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. If you like our coverage, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you click the notification bell. That way you get updates when we go live for another event. Tomorrow, President Trump is having a rally in Orlando, Florida. We're going to be there live, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. That way you get an update when we go live for that Trump rally. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Also, check out our second channel, Golden State Times Newsroom. And then, again, that's Golden State Times Newsroom. Make sure that you guys go and check it out. We're going to start filming right now the news videos for that channel. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Thank you so much for choosing Golden State Times as your stream of choice. Subscribe if you are new, and I hope to see you guys here next time. My name is Jen. I'm from Golden State Times, and I'll see you soon. Peace.